Jhasar, you may start.
So Rahul, Pramath Sinha sir is joining.
Yes, he's joining, sir.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was having some tech challenges, but I'm here. Sorry to keep you at the tenterhooks.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Professor Pramath Sinha.
Dr. Jha, you may start, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, all of you. Welcome to the session of ISDSI Global Talk Series. This is the third talk series hosted by ASMA. I would like to first introduce what ASMA stands for. I don't think that it needs an introduction, but yes, it is important we let the people and audience know about what ASMA is. ASMA is India's leading community in academia which aims to help uncover latest insight, anticipate future trends, provide a transformative digital and social media framework for growth, which can be adapted across preschools, schools, universities, and higher education institutions to keep the pace with the changing time. ASMA has now grown in its scope and spirit in 7 years. It now empowers academic institutes and universities through events, conference, research, ASMA portal, ASMA TV, ASMA awards, and many more. The journey of ASMA has not been very easy for the founders. Mr. Rahul Jain needs a commendable praise for bringing ASMA to this level. Started 7 years back, but year on year, the growth of ASMA as a community to help academia in the field of digital transformation has been commendable. And the brand equity which ASMA shares today is very much enriched and supported by higher education institutions. I welcome all the guests to the third ISDSI talk series. This is a 5-stage talk series which we started, and this is the third one. So may I request Dr. Ravi Kumar Jain, Director of SIBM Hyderabad, to please update us on ISDSI Global Talk Series.
Many thanks, Dr. Jha. Such a pleasure to invite today's eminent speakers, thought leaders in the field of management, education, and practice. Greetings to Professor Rajendra Srivastava, Mr. C.P. Gurnani, and Professor Pramath Sinha, Dr. Matri, the visionary behind the ISDSI Global, and Professor Balasubramanian for making it to this third webinar in the series of 5 webinars that ISDSI Global has planned. The topic, restructuring business schools so that they can adopt faster and innovate faster. ISDSI Global is a platform which is visualized, or rather, started with the aim to create a global forum from India for the world. And this is what we are, a vision with which we are driven by. And it came from none other than our Professor Matri. When we were working on ISDSI, which is the constituent of DSI Houston, Decision Sciences Institute, for 13 years. A couple of years ago, we were, as a board, we were brainstorming as to how do we scale it up in terms of scope and scale, and how do we ensure that the reverse innovation part happens now from Asia to the world, from India to the world, from the East to the West. ISDSI Global happened at that time, and we decided to have a spin-off forum which is global in scope and scale. The idea is to promote action, research, and academic excellence across the world, bringing thought leaders and academicians and practitioners on the same platform, and create that network which will have symbiotic impact in the strategic goal to bring in high impact research. So with that goal, we started, and the first conference we are doing in December, which is going to be hosted by IIM Nagpur between 27th and 30th of December, which are standard dates for all our conferences since 2007. And as a run-up to that conference, we have this 5-series webinar where we wanted the audience to start thinking on the aspects related to management education, the business schools of the future, the pedagogy of the future, the legal framework and policy framework which can accommodate the new age schools, business schools, and also the idea of internationalization. As you know, things are transforming and technology is enabling us big time when compared to that of what we enjoyed earlier. The term internationalization needs rethinking. So we have arranged these seminars, webinars, 5 webinars in the series with those topics. So today we are going to have a discussion on restructuring business schools for rapid adaptation and innovation. I think we need your good wishes and support to make ISDSI Global a truly global body. Thank you so much for the time. And thanks again, all the eminent speakers today to spare the time for this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Now I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our panelists. Let me start from Mr. Sept Gurnani. How can you show this slide?
Yeah.
We are proud to have you here, sir. We welcome you for this talk series. Mr. Sept Gurnani, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Tech Mahindra, is an accomplished business leader with extensive experience in digital transformation, development, startups, turnarounds, joint ventures, merger and acquisitions. In a career spanning over 35 years, Gurnani has held leading with HP Parrot Systems India Limited, HCL Corporation Limited. He has led Tech Mahindra's transformation journey and the acquisition and merger of Satyam. A chemical engineering graduate from the National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, he is distinguished and active alumnus of the institute. Gurnani was appointed to the board of Mahindra & Mahindra as a non-executive, non-independent director of the company's next AGM. He has also served as chairman of NASCOM for 2016-2017. He has been felicitated with an honorary doctorate degree by the Veer Surendra Sai University of Technology and was awarded the Best CEO of the Year 3 years in a row by Business Today. We welcome you, Gurnani sir, to the panel. Now we'll move to Mr. Pramath Raj Sinha, founder and chairman, Harappa Education. Yeah. Pramath Raj Sinha is an institution builder and educator. Pramath Raj Sinha is an institution builder and educator who has transformed many media houses in both digital and print. Sinha is current founder and chairman of Harappa Education. With his several years of experience in the media industry in various companies and organizations, he has built a successful career. Pramath is also the founder of Asoka University and the founding dean of the Indian School of Business. Sinha is extremely passionate about teaching the next generation of India's upcoming leaders. Sinha has a vision of creating future-ready institutions so that the budding industry-ready graduates can pass out with flying colors. Pramath began his career with McKinsey and Company in Toronto in 1993 and returned to India after 4 years to begin working on establishments of ISB. After McKinsey, Pramath next became the CEO and MD of Anand Bazar Patrika ABP Group. Soon he became a media entrepreneur himself. In the year 2007, he founded 9.9 Media Works, which worked on launching print and digital properties. We welcome you, sir, for this panel discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we will go to Professor Rajendra Srivastava. Professor Rajendra Srivastava is a Novartis Professor of Marketing Strategy and Innovation in ISB, also known as Indian School of Business. Srivastava has also been appointed as Fellow of the American Marketing Association for his immense long-term contribution to the marketing practices. Throughout all these years, Srivastava worked with the University of Texas at Austin as a Senior Associate Dean, next in Emory University as a Senior Associate Dean from 2003 to 2008. After that, Srivastava joined as the Deputy President and Provost at Singapore Management University. Srivastava is currently associated with ISB in India and has been working as a full-time Novartis professor since 2016. For his papers, which were based on the various aspects of marketing, he received Maynard Award, MSI Paul Root Award, and AMA State Foundation Award for his long-term impact in the field of marketing. We welcome you, Dr. Rajendra Srivastava, for this panel discussion. Now we'll go to Professor S. Balasubramanian, the moderator of the session. Balasubramanian is teaching, training and consulting expert from the management industry. He is currently working as the director of GRG School, Coimbatore. In his career span of 30 plus years, Subramanian has been associated with several prestigious educational institutes. He has been a part of institutions like TFI, Management Institute, Manipal, Resila India Limited, Chennai, Noble Azania Group, Bale, Larsen and Toubro, and so on. Subramanian has spent about 30 years in the industry in different functions such as productions, planning, marketing, human resource management, international trade and business, and general management. Subramanian has delivered over 200 keynotes, talks, and chaired many sessions of higher education. He is the author of a widely acclaimed book titled The Art of Business Leadership, Indian Experiences, New Delhi, by Sage Publication 2007. We welcome you, Professor S. Balasubramanian. May I request now Professor Bala to please take over the dais as a moderator and take the discussion ahead.
Sir, please unmute. Bala, sir, please unmute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jha, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon and good morning to all the participants. I welcome all the panel speakers, very, very eminent as they were introduced. I thought that the topic today is highly relevant. And the way I want to structure the discussion is we have a total of about 60 minutes, and perhaps each speaker can speak for about 10 minutes with their opening remarks, and then we will go on to a discussion among the panel members themselves, and thereafter we will take any questions that may appear in the chat box. And that is the way I thought we will do it. Is that okay with all of you?
Sure, sir.
Excellent. Very good. The theme is restructuring of business schools for rapid adaptation and innovation. Now, I'm emphasizing each of these words. And as I said in my communication with all the speakers, I believe that this has three major components. When you speak about restructuring, I'm not going to the details of the need for restructuring, because that is something that all of us understand very well. The world has changed, but in India, particularly in the past about 30 years, 20 years more specifically. And across the globe, if you talk about the last about 15 years in particular, the world has changed dramatically. And this change has impacted every sphere of our activity. You talk about education, you talk about industry, you talk about any sector that has had an impact, a significant impact. And therefore, I'm not going into why do we need to restructure. That is a given. As far as I'm concerned, I treat it as a given. Now, the way I look at it, there are three major components of that restructuring. One, I believe there is a restructuring in terms of the technology orientation. Ever since, in fact, I very in a light vein, I always tell my friends that it is no longer BC and AD. We now talk about BG and AG, before Google, after Google. That's what we refer to very often. And therefore, in the past about 15 years, technology has been accelerating, has been advancing on multiple dimensions. But this COVID pandemic, which is about now roughly about 18 months plus across the globe, that has given a further impetus for technology to change. The acceleration is at a much greater speed, at a much faster pace. And therefore, one component of this restructuring is how do we restructure, keeping in mind the technology orientation for business schools. That is one dimension. The second dimension that I see is the dimension of governance. Now today, for example, in 1991, let us say there were about 300 business schools in India. And today you are talking about close to about 5,000 business schools in India. The role of private sector in establishment of in business schools has been phenomenal in the past about 20 years. And therefore, there is a need for us to look at the governance structure, the governance system in the business schools. That is the second dimension. The third dimension is the academic component itself. The curriculum, you talk about the syllabi, you talk about the evaluation and assessment, you talk about the delivery in the class. All these components also need to be restructured. In fact, I'm very fond of saying that from the time I studied in IIM Calcutta, almost the same syllabus continues even today in many of the business schools across the country. And therefore, there is a serious need for the curriculum to be adapted to meet the requirements of today. There is a changing aspiration among the youth. There is a tremendous expectation. Therefore, we need to restructure the curriculum and the syllabi and the evaluation methods. For example, we always say that we should not promote or encourage rote learning. We also say that there should be more of skilling. Now, if I take the words of Professor Shrikant Dattar of Harvard Business, he was very fond of, he is very fond of saying the knowing, doing, being components of education. And I don't see around me much of an evidence for this transformation taking place in many of the B schools. In some B schools, it is there. I'm not denying that. But in many B schools, it is not there. So that is the third component. And I thought it may be a good idea because we have very conveniently 3 eminent speakers. This is my suggestion that perhaps the technology orientation can be very, very appropriately done by Mr. Gurnani, who is, of course, the CEO of Mahindra, which is a technology company. And the academic component, curriculum redesign and etc., can be done by the eminent former Dean of ISB, Dr. Srivastava, and the governance part can be done by Dr. Sinha. This is just my suggestion, but you are free to, if you want to touch upon any other topic, you can. So this is what I wanted to say as an opening. So the sequence in which I would like to call the people is we will go by technology orientation first. So I will invite Mr. Gurnani first, followed by the governance systems, which will be by Dr. Pramath Sinha, and the academic part by Dr. Srivastava as the third. I would request each of you to take about 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes for your opening remarks. You will have enough time later to add and supplement to whatever you are saying. So if it is okay with you, take about 8 to 10 minutes for your opening remarks, and then I will ask about 2 questions to each of you, and then we will leave the floor open for question and answer. Does it sound all right to all of you? Excellent.
Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And therefore, without much ado, may I now invite Mr. Gurnani to take the floor, as they will say, and then make your presentation on that. Mr. Gurnani, I have 2 specific questions also for you. One question is, when you talk about technology, perhaps you can touch upon this. Do you think this so-called online education, do you think that this is something which is permanent and we will do completely online teaching? That is one question. The second question is, obviously the faculty competencies need to change. What are the new competencies in your opinion the faculty should acquire to be technology enabled? Because in tier 2, tier 3 cities and all that, for example, it's a great challenge today, technology. It's okay for tier 1, it is okay for metro cities, but at the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, it is still a major, major challenge. So what are the new competencies for the faculty? These 2 specific questions also I have for you. Over to you, Mr. Gurnani. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor Balasubramanian. I couldn't help but reflect that Dr. Ravi Kumar, Pramath Sinha, Rajendra Srivastava ji, and I have something in common, which is called Hyderabad. Now, I don't know whether it is the biryani or the city or the work that we all did together at various stages of our lives, and it became a continuum. It's an honor to share the panel with Pramath, and he is clearly one of the role models. He has probably been one of the pioneers of Indian education, and I continue to look up to him for future of education. So let's look back for a minute. We all know different organizations will call it different statements, but the best way to describe it is that we all will continue to remain in turbulence. It doesn't matter, today it is COVID, tomorrow it will be government policies, third day it will be polarization, the fourth day it could be the war, the fifth day it could be something else. And is turbulence a challenge? or the way we handle the turbulence, is that the challenge? It is very, very clear that most of the management studies have prepared us for the change, but may not have prepared us for the headwinds, may not have prepared us for continuous turbulence. In a typical, colloquial language, a management education prepares us for a game called snakes and ladders, where we all know that there will be bumps on the road. We would have a level of a tailwind, but what is the best way to deal with turbulence? And I'm sure when Pramath and Professor Srivastava talk about it, they will remember that some organizations, some managers are better because they're trained as wartime generals and they're not trained to be just the peacetime generals. And to me, if the today's management education trains people to become wartime generals, I think we would have adopted a lot better. We would have answered the question whether B schools have to be restructured for rapid adoption and innovation. I've been part of this industry, particularly the technology industry, for the past 40 years. And being in technology industry, we have served educational institutes, we have served oil and gas, we have served roads, we have served every industry. And in a way happy that every time a word transformation is used, it always has a major element of technology transformation. And I know the purists here would disagree, and they would say it is more about people transformation or a process transformation. And I'm not saying that I don't disagree with them. I'm just saying I'm happy that people transformation, process transformation has always been done with technology transformation. Now, we have seen some of the best known transformations in the world. We have seen during our times the demise of a lot of companies. People remember Nokia phones and Apple, people remember Samsung, and people remember Doordarshan. People also remember that Netflix is a bigger platform. Yesterday, somebody sent me a huge article that even in technology, there is a differentiator. A software as a service company called ServiceNow is valued more than a pure technology company called IBM. I mean, somebody did remind me that Zomato is valued because of its technology platform more than all the hotel chains of India, including the fancy five-star hotel put together. And what does that show? That technology is a clear differentiator. So I think when we look at tomorrow of education, when we look at the B schools, we will have to prepare people who are the Zomato kings or the ServiceNow kings, because a brick and mortar can definitely add value, but a brick and mortar with technology platform will add a lot more value. I tried to look at Professor Balasubramanian's key word, which was adapt. And I just scribbled. I said, let us say what A stands for. In my first reaction, A here was agile. D was for disruption. A was for aspirations. P was for polarization, and T was for technology. And why am I bringing this again and again is because if technology enables you to become agile, if it allows you to disrupt, if it allows you to attain much higher aspiration, and if it allows you to beat one of the governance challenges, which means a borderless world. Technology enables you to run a borderless world. And hence, in my opinion, sir, that technology will be the huge differentiator. And think about it, disruption, how does that happen? What will be the disruption? Will it be visualize a company of 2030? Would you say it is 40,000 employees? Would you say, or would you say 40,000 employees and 80,000 robots, 90,000 chatbots? And would you say that the supply chain of tomorrow will not be the drones? So if all of that is true, let me try and answer the two questions that Professor asked me. First question he asked me was, what is my opinion about the B-Schools going online? And what is the role of in-class experience? Now, I am a strong advocate, maybe I am old school. I am a strong advocate, and that's what I told my children who went to very good schools, that please spend 50% of your time outside the academics. Try and join as many fraternities, try and join as many activities, try and network as much as possible, because the journey itself is an education. Now, if that is true, if you all agree, my children have finished education 5 years, or not exactly finished education, they came out of their B schools only a few years ago. If my advice to them was spend 50% or more of your time outside the academics, I do believe is the same thing is applicable even today. So I'm not against online education. All I'm trying to make sure is that we, as the leaders of the society, we as the educationists, or we as the people who will influence the young minds, remember that a today's student may be very, very good at virtual reality, may be phenomenal in video games, may be phenomenal in simulation, may be very, very good in, online teaching. But unless we develop the full personality, unless we put them into situations, unless we make them interact with the teams, we are not doing our job fully. I know purists of today will disagree with me, but Professor Balasubramanian, that is really my opinion about the education. The second part, and I'm again saying, we will improvise our digital way of learning. I am conscious that I've been running a company for the past 14 months by being online. So I am not trying to say is that there are no different methods to do group exercises, but I still believe the best model can only be hybrid. It cannot be purely online. The second question was about faculty. Being a chairman of IIM Nagpur, I can only say that I continuously interact with Professor Maitri and the faculty. I have always said they are the real leaders. I, as a leader, if I have to continuously evolve, continuously learn, continuously embrace new world, I think they, whether they are 35-year-old assistant professors or whether they are professors, they also need to lead by example. Lead by examples are really where they, number one, continuously adopt. Number two, they understand that today the world is based on technology. You have live polling tools, Mentimeter, Kahoots. You have discussion boards. You have Kindles and the audiobooks. You have podcasts. You have vlogs. You have massive open online courses. Treat them as your friends. Treat them as the way you would engage with your students. And you will realize that the learning environment has changed, will change, and it is our job as faculty to continuously adopt the new methods.
Thank you
It's the
very
same
much.
way I, with my grandchild, adopt gamification. When I'm a faculty, I take into account gamification is not about making faces, it is about simulating some of the games. So in a sense, I feel encouraged that all of us together are looking at technology, looking at simulation, and looking at upskilling and reskilling. And I am very, very confident that B-School faculty will continue to provide leadership that the young India needs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gurnani, for those wonderful opening remarks. I will just leave a thought with you. Many of the things that we see around us today did not exist a few years ago. And therefore, one of the things people talk about is the very definition of what constitutes work itself will undergo a tremendous change. What we consider as work today itself may undergo tremendous change. I'm just leaving the thought with you. We will come back and we will discuss it more. May I now invite Dr. Raj Sinha to come in and discuss something about the governance of institutions. There are many dimensions of governance which need to be restructured. Right from, you have the governing council, academic advisory body, board of studies, and things like that. From that, including how do you treat your faculty, how do you treat your staff, and so on and so forth. The entire governance structure, whether it is necessary for us to have only the non-profit, the trust way of having educational institutions, or can you also open it up as a regular industry, as a regular enterprise? Can we do that? So these are some of the issues I have for you. Over to you, Dr. Raj Sinha.
Thank you, Professor Balasubramanian, and thank you, CP, for those very powerful ideas. I concur with a lot of what you are saying, though my topic is slightly different. I'll cheat a little bit and comment on some of the things that you talked about also. Let me try and frame my remarks in the interest of time around governance, and let me focus on three aspects of governance, and I'll touch on the points that you spoke about, Professor Balasubramanian, specifically. So first, the idea of the governance at the top. See, for as long as I have known it, and for a long time in the future, I think the ethics and integrity of the owners and the board will always be a gray area in education in India. Because while we have a lot of regulation, the implementation of that regulation is very flawed. So the regulations are overbearing, which means that good people don't enter the field of education. They are so overbearing that only the people who can circumvent those regulations or bend those regulations enter.
Okay.
And so by definition, their antecedents are dodgy, as they say. And you and I don't think can change that and do much about it other than to lament and discuss and comment on it and observe it. And it is there. You are absolutely right. I think what is heartening to see is that some of the new models are emerging, are bucking that trend. And I would like to submit that ISB is a great trendsetter in that, and several new institutions that have started in this area have chosen to very clearly say, listen, we are not about making money, whether for profit, non-profit. Even in non-profits, you can make a lot of money. So we are not commercially oriented. We care about educational outcomes. We care about students. We care about quality. We care about faculty, and respect faculty, as you alluded to. So I think it's very important that we continue to hold out examples of that and make such institutions successful, so that even the ones who are not professional will want to professionalize over time, because they will see that and say, hey, those are the guys who are really successful, so I need to do something about that. And I do see that trend. A lot of people come to me and say, oh, I was running this a little bit like a zamindari so far. How do I become more professional? So people are waking up and answering that question as they see, asking that question, as they see the Ashokas, the Kriyas, the Plakshas, the flame, and so on. So it's important that we keep demonstrating examples, and those examples succeed is going to be very important. So I think that's the first thing I would say about, that's the first thing I would say about the governance. And the core of that is a simple idea that no one person or no one entity should own the institution. So you have two deans of ISB here. If you ask us who owns ISB, we don't have an answer. We cannot answer. Technically, we just cannot answer that question. There is no one person or one entity that owns ISB. And this is not new. If you look at the top institutions of the world, who owns Harvard, or who owns HBS or Wharton or Kellogg or INSEAD? We don't know. We don't know who owns these institutions. And I think that's the governance that we have to aspire to. No one person or no one NGO or non-profit should even own. Even in some of the examples of non-profits, and I don't want to name them, started by entrepreneurs in this country, are actually run by their relatives or brothers or cousins or son-in-laws. And I think that just sets off the wrong signal, even if it is being run straight, unfortunately. And they can be there, but you need to broaden the ownership to include a collective ownership rather than a single ownership. So that's my first point. And that gets driven not just by making people members of the board or of the governing council or the governing body or the board of management, but genuinely giving that group the authority to take decisions, such as hiring of vice chancellors or deans or directors, right? We just ran a process to find Professor Srivastav's replacement. And in fact, Professor Srivastav was recruited in his time by a similar search committee. And I can tell you that that kind of search process is just not run in India. It was a professionally set up board subcommittee. There was a search firm, high degree of confidentiality, 18-month process, really. And these are established, it's not like we are inventing something new. These are all norms that exist already. We are just bringing them in and practicing them. That's all. So I do think that giving the decision-making to a broader group and choosing that broader group carefully is the key thing at the topmost level. Now, to the second level of things like academic council and so on, I think we have to, and I'll say this as having a little bit of an academic DNA in me, we have to break the stranglehold of the pure academic on the curriculum and the programs. And at least I don't know about the others, but I know that Dr. Srivastav would agree with me. He coined the word, which I borrow liberally and without attribution, shamelessly, pracademic, right? And I've seen him say this many times. I've learned this from him. But, business, and to what CP was saying, this is has to be a practical learn to do, but also, like I said, do to learn. Learn to do, which is what we normally do in the classroom, but also do to learn. You have to learn from the practitioners. You have to practice and learn, and you have to bring that into the classroom. There is no option left today. So bringing in alumni, industry leaders, practitioners into the room is very important. I mean, I dare say that while CP probably heads the IIM Nagpur board, I doubt if he really gets involved in saying what should the curriculum be. and I'm not trying to put CP or Dr. Maitri in the hot seat, but I'm just saying that that's typically not the case. IIMs have wonderful boards of luminary business leaders, but how many of them are really involved in shaping the curriculum of these institutions? So I do think in the governance of the curriculum, the programs, I think we need to bring in practitioners and indeed alumni. You don't have to go too far. I've helped the Birlas set up a new business school in Mumbai. Mr. Birla is still the chairman of the governing council, and he didn't need to set up a board, but I forced him to bring in BITS alums, academics, and CEOs into that governing council, and gave them the authority to decide what we were going to teach and not. And he agreed with that. He sees the point of that. The last thing that I will say is that somewhere in educational institutions, the students have to come first. And we have neglected that in our country. We almost have an adversarial relationship with our students. And, this is a cliched thing to say, so I'm sorry to bring this up here. We all complain about this and we all lament it, but it is so true even in business school education. Because the student's life has completely changed to the point that you are making. The future of work is completely different. And by the way, the big reason you need online education, Professor Balasubramanian, and we have no choice, is that the business school degree is not a 2-year degree any longer. You have to keep learning throughout your life. You have no choice. And you can't do that bringing them back to the campus in Hyderabad or Mohali. You have to do it online. There's no choice. And my contention is that there is nothing like online learning. There is only lifelong learning left now. Whether you do hybrid, in-person, online, async, all these are choices. I learned all my physics from two professors called Mr. Resnick and Mr. Halliday, who were sitting in Purdue and I was sitting in Patna, and I learned through a book. We used to do hybrid learning then also. My physics teacher in school couldn't teach me physics, so I learned from the book. Or so similarly, you will go online, you'll watch YouTube videos, you'll do whatever. But I think the business schools have to recognize this, and we have to, in the governance, think about possibilities for the future that did not exist before. To give you an example, eruditus is valued at $3.2 billion. Simply Learn just got bought out by Byju's for 600 million. And Great Learning. And I may be getting these numbers wrong, but they're so large, it doesn't matter. Simply Learn so Great Learning got bought by Byju's for 600 million, and Simply Learn got a $250 million investment from Blackstone, who obviously want to grow that and do an IPO. Let me tell you, all these guys are riding on the back of business school programs. If you look at what they offer, they are all the programs of ISB and IIM Nagpur, which we should have been offering. They are hollowing us out. There is no reason that we should not be actually doing these. And it's not about the money. The point is, and why are they valued? Because students are going there. And we are leaving the space. We are vacating the space for students because we say, listen, we just have a 2-year program. Now we are trying to do executive education and so on. But if we don't move into this space fast enough, the Byju's, the Simply Learns, the Great Learnings, all are eating our lunch. I mean, that's what they're doing and making money from it. That's a different point. So anyway, I will stop there. And I will say that for me, your point about governance is not so much about ethics and integrity. It's about innovation, which is the point you raise. And we are not going to be able to innovate fast enough unless we really bring in the practitioners and keep up with the times. In every sector, unfortunately, academics have a hard time keeping up with what is happening in the outside world. In some sectors, the academics dictate what is happening outside. They come up with new technologies, they discover some new. But I think in management, you have to keep very close touch with what is happening in the outside world. That's happening so quickly that we have to change our internal governance model to keep up with that and really keep our focus on the student. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Back to you.
Dr. Sinha, that was wonderful. I think it was a wide coverage of issues that you addressed, very, very relevant issues, I must say. And the point that you made about from doing to learning and learning to doing, I think is very, very important, particularly for business education, because unlike other kinds and formats of education, business education is the other way around. It is from practice flows the theory almost. So that is a wonderful concept. And I take your points about governance. I think you have hit the nail on the head very well. That there has to be a greater participation of alumni and the industry in the formation and the design of the curriculum and so on. I'm aware personally of few companies who are engaged actively with some of the engineering colleges around the country in specific curriculum design and things like that, which are very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Sinha. That was wonderful. And I will come back to you with some more questions. And there are already some questions in the chat room. And incidentally, we have about 175 participants in this program as of now, excluding ourselves. Dr. Srivastava, I'm now coming back to you for issues relating to the curriculum and the syllabi and the evaluation and the entire gamut of academic content, including the delivery, because I think delivery assumes importance in today's world. How do you deliver content? The content itself, thanks to Google, is already available. The question is, how do you deliver? How do you make it application oriented? That becomes the major question. So over to you, Dr. Srivastava, for your opening remarks, 8 to 10 minutes. You are muted. You are muted.
Thank you, Professor Balasubramanian, and thanks, Pramath. Your remarks were right on the money. One of the things I have learned is to learn from the people I interact with. And almost 25 years ago, I was developing a management program for MD Anderson Cancer Center. And this was the #1 ranked cancer hospital in the United States, and still is. And working with them, I discovered they had two kinds of faculty: research faculty and clinical faculty. Clinical faculty were the ones who implemented the therapies that were discovered by the research faculty. And they're the ones who put it in practice. So that's one observation. Second observation is, while I was in Singapore, I ran into the former Chief Justice, Mr. Young Pa Hao, and I asked him that Singapore was no different from India in 1965 in terms of the legal system. How did you clear up the backlog? And all the lawyers used to be scared of him when he was Chief Justice. But when I met him, he was gentle. He was the patron for the university. He says, Raj, it is very simple. If the defendant didn't show up, I ruled. If the plaintiff didn't show up, I ruled. If neither showed up, I still ruled. And if there was a frivolous protest, I doubled the fines. So that was the statement, make decisions. So one thing that I did at Singapore Management University is I formed a council of deans that met monthly to make decisions. And if a dean, let's say for the law school, didn't show up, he had to send the deputy dean who was authorized to make a decision, because we made decisions on a monthly basis. So that was one aspect. Another aspect is, again, coming from the law school, is that for lawyers, you really need practicing lawyers to be doing the teaching. And so the balance between theory and practice, learning from MD Anderson Cancer Center, learning from the law school, I started pushing for clinical faculty that we in business schools call practice faculty. And these are people who may be chief marketing officer, CFO, CEO of formerly CEO. We bring them in to talk about issues like change management, leadership. These are not issues that we as academics are trained to deal with. And this is the point that Pramath made, that we need academics. So it need not be one person, but across the faculty, we need to balance, the practical approach. Now, coming to what does it mean in terms of some structural changes? A lot of what we teach has simply been borrowed from the West. The US is not like India. In India and in many developing countries, the government plays an active role, and we need to include government-related, processes, whether public policy issues. So whether we're talking about the highway system or we're talking about pharmaceuticals, there is a role for the government, and that's not there in any of the textbooks or the case studies that you see from the West. So we have to generate internal, content. So one thing that we have tried to do at ISB is to have faculty have two associations. One is the discipline you're from, and the other is the domain or the research area that you work in. So somebody could be a professor in operations, but they are managing the Institute for Healthcare. And like I'm a professor of marketing, but I'll be managing innovation, the Institute for Innovation. So to have a dual identity, a disciplinary identity and a practice identity. So that's one thing we've tried to do. We've also tried to bring in, people who spend 20, 30 years in the business community. Indeed, we've started a DBA program, which we call the Executive Fellows Program, where the average participant in that program has 22 years of experience. And they hold the title Chief Operating Officer, Chief Marketing Officer. So the idea is to take these people and convert them into academics that would be available. The second part is we must start working on things that really matter. We all of us have courses called financial statement analysis. The IIMs, the ISPs, everybody does. But when you look at valuation, CP mentioned it, Pramath mentioned it. But if you look at the valuation of Tata Consultancy, it's about 14, the price to book ratio is 14:1, meaning about 7% of TCS is on the balance sheet. So where the hell is the remaining 93%? Or if you go to Hindustan Unilever, the price to book ratio is 62:1. Less than 2% of Hindustan Unilever is on the balance sheet. So we need to start looking at what are the variables that are causing these valuations to take place. And a lot of these assets are networks. These assets are in the platforms, etc., that we're talking about. So we need to start looking at, what are these mechanisms that are leading to value creation, as opposed to what the textbooks were saying 10, 15 years ago. We also need to look at what needs to be done in the industry. So I like to say that we in the business schools have to start worrying about value migration. What do I mean by that? We do a lot of apparel production in Ludhiana, let's say. But the branding and marketing is being done out of Oregon by Nike. All right? We write code in Bangalore and Hyderabad. It is productized in Washington State in the US. So we need to have a much better idea of value capture and not simply, selling on the lowest cost production that we can come up with. We have gone through tremendous change in this country in the last 5 years on digital transformation. When I see what we have with the India stack, Aadhaar, UPI, eKYC, etc., no other country has it. State Bank of India's YONO program is something that Citibank from the US cannot match. And we need to start exporting our ideas and exporting our practices. These are very valuable systems, that we have created. And bringing technology, what CP was saying, technology will change the face of everything, but we have to absorb that technology. We have to bring that into the content. So whether we're talking about edutech that Pramath talked about, or we're talking about health tech, or we're talking about technology, in legal, bringing into legal processes. There's the role for technology all over the place, and it needs to be absorbed not just in the delivery of the content, it needs to be absorbed in the content itself. So as business schools, we need to start looking at what are the ways in which the world is changing. It has to be more agile. We need to talk about how to build agility into business processes. How do we build resilience? How do we use information to build that agility and resilience? So these are the things that we need to do, and we should not just be borrowing from the textbooks. We should be creating much of it ourselves. And my last point is we need that industry academic collaboration. So industry and academia need to work together to create some of these processes. And there should be a mechanism where academics can go for a corporate immersion. We go for a sabbatical to other universities. Why don't we go for a sabbatical to a corporate for 3 to 6 months? And similarly, the corporate community should come in as executives in residence for maybe 2 to 4 weeks every year. That should be part of their requirement. Go and teach and go and learn. And many companies in the US have had a requirement in the old days for about, you have to spend a week in the academic environment in terms of learning. With today, changes that are taking place, I really think people in industry should spend at least 2 weeks or a month in an academic institution. But academics should also take 3 to 6 months on every 3-year cycle, get out of the university and go and work with Tech Mahindra. So let me just stop.
Thank you very much, Professor Srivastava. That was wonderful. I just have a question for you. Do you believe that knowledge today is available on the net, but what is not available is application of that knowledge, and that can only be given by the business schools, by the faculty, through the process of learning. Do you subscribe to that view?
A lot of learning is really group learning. That's one of the things we do very well at ISB. We make the students work as a group. They learn teamwork in the process, but they also learn how to solve problems. So the critical thinking, you can't force it, through lectures and so on and so forth. So one of the things that we need to shed is this aspect of rote learning, forced learning. We have to learn by doing things. And one other thing I would like to add is that when people from industry get involved in teaching, they will learn that to deliver a 3-hour lecture, you have to prepare for 3 days.
Correct.
Because to be able to teach, you have to have that clarity of thinking. And that clarity of thinking means you can also answer questions and anticipate some of those questions. And therefore, I would highly recommend that in order to learn, you have to teach to learn. And that holds for all of us.
That is true.
So I've sort of skirted your question, but I really believe that that you have to do some amount of learning by doing, and not the teachers can't impart all of learning. You have to learn to learn.
I think Mr. Gurnani has another engagement and he wants to leave. So maybe all thank you very much for your opening remarks, Mr. Gurnani. That was wonderful about technology. We will take it further in your absence and we will revert to you with all the clarification that we may require. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for making yourself available. Thank you very much and take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CP sir from ISDSI Global. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar. Thank you.
All right. So we are back. the other, Dr. Srivastava, I just want to continue the dialogue. Now, Sundar Pichai has been talking a lot about Google using artificial intelligence and things like that. And as we see, more and more students in business schools are using the net for information. You have any comments on that?
Well, I have a comment about artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is indeed artificial. And you can uncover all kinds of patterns in there. When I was a student, there was a book or paper that I read about how to lie with statistics. And the example they were using is that just because the cost of rum and the salary of clergymen were going up at the same time, it did not mean that the clergymen were spending all the money to buy rum, and that was pushing up the price. So what we need today is more augmented intelligence. We need to have the theoretical frameworks, the practice, what we learn from practice, and we need to combine it with experimentation, whether it's price experimentation or giving incentives to employees, etc. But through experimentation, looking at what are the changes that are actually activated by some action. So we need to augment the information from artificial intelligence with some real life information in order to make decisions. Yes, there's a lot of information available on Google. There's also a lot of misinformation available. You can find all kinds of things on literally every topic. And in fact, one of the problems is that with too much information, for example, since I'm in marketing, there's so much information available on products that people get fed up, and brands have actually become more important. So, one would argue with information theory that information would make brands irrelevant because consumers would have all the information about the product, but consumers don't have the time, or the inclination, or the ability to process all that information. So in this digital age, brands are actually becoming more important, and therefore the valuation of branded companies is going through the roof.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Professor Srivastava. One question to both Raj Sinha and yourself. Both of you touched upon this need for practitioners to be participating as a faculty to teach. And both of you also mentioned about the need for faculty to have industry exposure in industry experience. My own experience is that while everybody talks about it, particularly in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and things like that, this industry institute interaction becomes more and more difficult because the industry doesn't open up to the faculty. The faculty are hesitant to go to the industry for exposure. How do you think we should go about it?
Pramath, did you want to comment, or did you want me to say my 2 cents on this?
I can just give an example of what I've done, but Raj, why don't you go ahead and I'll come in and give.
All right. So what we really need to do is we need greater participation in the classroom. In 1988, I started teaching a course called Marketing of Technology-Intensive Products and Services. And what I did was I reached out to 3M company, Hewlett-Packard, Advanced Micro Devices, etc. So we had the regular case studies and the theoretical frameworks. That was half the course. The second half of the course was actually a live project that we got from these companies. And I had 35 students, 7 groups, 7 companies. And so I had these kids working on real problems. And they turned out results which were very, very good. In fact, the companies, several of them told me that the output that they got from the students was better than the output from some of the consulting companies. And so what this led to is a way of engaging with real problems. But I got these people from industry. They were so charged up at being able to teach, and being around in the community, that sort of really helped. I think as we look at, it's not, the business schools are actually in some ways a little bit better engaging with industry. But when I look at science and technology, there's not much interaction taking place. I think we need to take a look at internships very seriously. I'm talking about 4-year programs now. So when I was at Singapore Management University, we required an internship for you to be able to have a major. And we encourage double majors like law and finance. So if you had a double major, you had to have 2 internships. And because of that structure, there was, number one, more interaction between the academics and industry. Number two, the students turned out to be ambidextrous. 2 majors and ambidextrous in theory as well as in practice because of the internships. So we need to look at the changes that we can make structurally, and so whether an institution is in Hyderabad or in Jharkhand, I don't see why we cannot get that greater engagement, because right now industry is struggling. If I look at the IT sector, salaries are going through the roof because we can't find enough people who can get things done. And it would be wonderful if we had, let's say, 10 companies, like in, we have a process of adopting a road in Austin, Texas to keep the roads clean. Businesses on that road form a coalition to keep the road clean. Similarly, industry should take the responsibility of working with engineering, schools and business schools, and adopting a school may not be a bad idea. Over to you, Pramath.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Sinha, you want to add anything?
Very quickly, I want to add that I firstly agree with Raj's view, and I just want to give you a small example which may address some of the concern. I do think that you'll be surprised if you did approach people in industry for help. A lot of people are actually quite keen to contribute to 2nd-tier and 3rd-tier towns, and schools and students and leaders, potential leaders, entrepreneurs from these towns. So I run a very interesting program in Leh, Ladakh, which I started 3 years ago. It's called the Naropa Fellowship Program. Think of it as a 1-year entrepreneurship leadership MBA. It's a 1-year program. I have to tell you that I have the least problems trying to find faculty to go to Leh, Ladakh. They want to go physically. Now, you may say that, hey, that's a biased example because everybody wants to go to that location. But a lot of the people who come there are not just coming for the location. They are actually excited by the idea of creating entrepreneurs in a very remote area. And I also challenge them a little bit. I say, if you're worth your salt, you'll help a guy start a business in Leh, right? So people immediately kind of wake up, right? And why don't you use technology to solve for what's happening in a remote area like Leh, and not just solve for business, but sustainability, agriculture, water, land, so on. So I think if you present that as a challenge, that inspires people to I'm similarly involved in IIM Bodhgaya. The board there asked me to help out. And while maybe people are not so willing to go physically, now with online, I have not had anybody say no to me. And I say, listen, I'm from Bihar, yeah, please help. We are trying to build an IIM in Bihar. So, there's a little bit of emotional blackmail and cajoling, I should say, works. So I do think that people are not averse. I don't think we are approaching them enough. And you know this, everybody wants to teach. To Raj's point, everybody does want to teach and learn. I also don't want to get too carried away. I do want to say that there is a certain academic integrity involved for which the academics are required. And let's not get this wrong. I mean, we should not throw out the academics and say that, we just need people with industry background. That would be dangerous.
Oh, yes.
But I do also believe that just as I can't just go into a operation theater and do heart surgery. I think a classroom is sacred, and nobody should just walk into a classroom and start saying I'm an academic and I'm giving lectures. To Raj's point, people should be trained before they are allowed into the classroom. And teaching is a profession. It's not just some walk in the park.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to keep that in mind also as you bring the practitioner into the classroom. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, you are a practitioner, so you can teach.
No.
So, Pramath, I'd like to expand on that. In fact, this Executive Fellows program I talked about with people with 22 years average experience, it's a 3-year program. It's not that you come and learn to teach case studies and then you're off and running and being a professor.
Yes. Thank you. One last question from my side before I open it up. The new education policy, or the national education policy as it is called, what kind of a major impact do you think it will have on business schools?
I'll let Pramath answer that one first, and then I'll pitch in.
So I don't have a pat answer for you, but I think the big things in the policy are about holistic and multidisciplinary education. I think business schools should think about that. Business education today is not just about business education. It's really about preparing people for the future. These are people who are taking big decisions about your and my life. The business degree is no longer only about business roles. People are going into it. I always say this, the MBA is the only pivot degree. You studied something else, you want to go into a new area, go get an MBA. It's not because you just want to work in. That's the only degree that allows you to transition from one orbit to another orbit, from one galaxy to another galaxy. So a lot of people are doing MBAs. So MBAs have to see the value that they are providing. I think MBAs provide tremendous value. I think there's a real opportunity to make it a more holistic degree that anyone can do anything. And that's what we are helping you do. Right? We're giving you a set of skills. So I think that's one big part of the new education policy that for me resonates with what an MBA can do.
And probably also the academic bank of credits.
I was going to come to that. So the other is this, picking up credits along the way. I liken it to that famous Steve Jobs speech where he says that, the dots always connect. That's a more profound way of saying this rather than a bank of credits. But, credits are now becoming currency. I think we as business schools have to start to think that way. And that's the point that connects to my point about simply learn and great learning and eruditus, right?
Yes.
That's essentially what they're doing is they're saying, listen, course is not now about a 1-year, 2-year master's. It's about a currency that you accumulate over a lifetime. And I think
and it's a basket. The basket you pick.
Yes. So that's what I think. I think we'll take I should want to take a course from IIM Nagpur and then go to ISB and then maybe go to Emory and SMU and accumulate those credits. Now, it'll be a while before that becomes all adding up to a degree, but people don't care about a degree. They just care about accumulating the money in the bank, right? It doesn't matter that I need a signature from the Reserve Bank of India, right? As long as I have money in different banks, I'm still wealthy as the sum. And that's where we are, I think, headed. And I think we have to start thinking that way.
Yeah. Professor Srivastava?
Well, the part I would like to see more about is openness and more competition, in the field. Because there's a saying that rising tide raises all ships. And the more competitive we can make the Indian education system, the business school network, the better it will be, for all of us. And I'd like to see that element. The other thing that I would like to see is more interdisciplinary thinking. This is something that I've prescribed to for several decades. And there should be greater collaboration between engineering, business, and law coming from the professional school side. And this is not just true in India, it's true elsewhere as well. that we are very hierarchical. There's engineering, there's business, there's law. Within business, there's marketing and there's finance, and never the twain shall meet. And because of the pace of change in the technological environment, we don't have that much time to do things and then to do things separately and then try to integrate them later. We need to do them in parallel because the sequential integration doesn't work.
Thank you. In fact, silos don't work as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava. We have 9 more minutes to close. There is one question in the question answer box, which talks about universities and the university system of affiliation, etc., which makes it difficult for the business schools affiliated to universities changing very fast, because most of them are outdated and they are finding it difficult to change because of the university system. Any comments on that?
So I can maybe go in on this one, Raj. And I will say this in all honesty, because I don't think there's anything confidential here. But I was very involved with a group of alumni, some very illustrious alumni, Ajay Piramal, Chanda Kochar, Uday Kotak, Harish Manwani. We're all alumni of the Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, which is actually a department which is part of Mumbai University.
Correct.
Department, it's not a school. And I have to tell you that it was an unsuccessful effort, twice unsuccessful, under 2 different vice chancellors. So I empathize with the point that the gentleman is making. I think I saw that question. Pranay God has asked that question, and I think it's a governance point. To your earlier question, it's bang on. The university system does not realize that this animal is a very different animal from economics and history and literature. And that's not only true for business school, by the way. The architecture school, the law school, these are all professional schools, and professional schools have to be treated differently from a department. Unless you have the simple understanding. Again, my frustration with all this is that education systems around the world recognize it. Pramath Sinha is not coming up with some deep new insight. These are all well-known solutions. So I think universities have to treat these as professional schools. Interestingly, in Mumbai University and at JBIMS, a lot of the teachers are actually practitioners, and that was their big claim to fame. At one time, JBIMS and IMA were at the same level in the 70s, and that's why they had such illustrious alumni. People applied to IIM Ahmedabad, and the same people would try and go to Jamnalal Bajaj. It was right in the center of, it's in Church Gate, it's in a great location. I mean, if it was in any other school in any other city in the world, it would be a top B school, right? But the problem is that the university still doesn't recognize they recognize the potential, but they are not able to break away from the processes that they apply to the history department and give the autonomy that is required to build the school. So I do think that this is a very important point. I don't think there's any other reason why they wouldn't get industry participation. It's just the governance model that doesn't recognize that you have to allow them that autonomy and that freedom. That's my take on this. And it's very simple.
Dr. Srivastava, you want to add anything?
Well, if I take a broader, not just India, but a broader view, partly it's the administration, but partly it is the faculty themselves who love to shoot themselves in the foot. Every university that I've been at has a faculty senate. And so it's the faculty themselves who hold things back. And so one is the governance side, it's the self-governance also. That is a problem. There's several people have commented that the universities are the slowest entities to change, with the sole exception of perhaps the Catholic Church. And and one of the main reasons is that we have schools and we have departments, and everybody is fighting for their turf, and whether a particular course is the financial strategy course or a corporate strategy course, this turf wars. And that's, for example, one of the things that is holding back multidisciplinary courses, because the structure is departmental. So if it is multidisciplinary, whom does it belong to?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think we have had very interesting discussions so far. Unfortunately, for want of time, I'm not able to go further. Thank you very much, both of you, and of course, in absentia, Mr. Gurnani, for your wonderful remarks and wonderful thoughts that you have shared, which all of us will take forward in our own thinking. May I now hand it back over to the organizers?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was really a great insight, which we heard you. And normally when we deal with these situations, we normally face all these issues every day. So there was great insights which came in. Hopefully we will be able to take it forward. I would like to definitely reiterate the contribution of Professor Subramanian for doing a great moderation for this discussion. The highlights which Mr. Gurnani said about adapting turbulence and developing ability of the institute to overcome these ongoing turbulence is really true, because many times we have taught in the management program about handling difficult situations. But when the difficult situation keeps coming every day, then what to do, maybe many business schools have not taught, and maybe in the future we can look into. It was a great insight from Dr. Pramath talking about educational outcome and the conflict between the ideologies of running an institute versus bringing ownership pattern and broaden the governance and being collectively owning the system to develop it. Dr. Rajendra Srivastava talked about research faculty, clinical faculty, council of dean to make decisions on monthly basis, and he basically tried to give us insight on how to develop agile management and come across industry academic collaboration, which will enhance the quality of education in the management school. So we thank you, sir, for giving us such a wonderful insight. We learned a lot, and hope we'll do this kind of talks in future. Now, may I move to the next agenda point? Before I move to next agenda point, I would like to first thank IIM Nagpur for presenting this. Dr. Maitri, thank you very much for presenting this talk series, third talk. And also I would like to thank our sponsor, Edu Vacancy, who sponsored us for this event and becoming a partner. May I now move ahead in the agenda point and request Mr. Nitin Gupta, serial entrepreneur, public speaker, to take it forward. Let me introduce him. Mr. Nitin Gupta, serial entrepreneur, public speaker, career counselor, edutech expert. Nitin Gupta has been a pioneer in edutech space. Mr. Nitin Gupta is the founder of a B2B edutech company. Nitin is extremely driven, energetic, and passionate about creating value through education. Nitin Gupta has been a resourceful counselor in the field of education since 2002. He has been successfully counseled more than 15,000 students through career workshops and seminars in the last 18 years. He has conducted 350 plus seminars, workshops on career counseling across various cities in India and abroad. He has been a panelist in numerous academic competitions in schools like India School, GGHS, IPS School, etc. He uses his teaching experience to train teachers and counselors in various educational institutions. He has taken various workshops across the country to guide school principals about the digital education system. We welcome you, Mr. Nitin Gupta.
Thanks, sir.
May I now hand over to Mr. Gupta for taking it ahead?
I think thanks a lot, and I think all the dignitaries. I'm seriously overwhelmed to interact, to listen your discussion, especially Professor Subramaniam and Mr. Raj Sinha. So I think I was really excited with that, and I know I've been to a few management schools also to deliver some talks, a few talks. So I think I'm seriously excited. It's looking, coming back to the system. So I think I'm happy on that. Now I'll just tell you, because what exactly the Edu vacancy is and how we started this. Uh, Idea was very clear, because a lot of schools, edtech companies, and when you talk about test prep companies, and even the colleges, I visit them as a counselor, because I am doing this counseling for last so many years. So after completing my session, when their coordinator, he or she takes me to the principal's room or the director's room in the college, the first thing they ask me, Nitilji, you visit so many places. Can you give us good faculty members or the teachers? Because we are really in need of good teachers and faculty members. So I think that is a very common concern across education institutions. And in edtech companies, the problem is the IT people are not ready to come down to the edtech companies, because they are more comfortable in the software companies. So although edtech is one of the leading fields right now, but still the students are not very much comfortable entering into the edtech segment. And they prefer a fintech company or e-commerce company or the pure software company. So we really saw that there is a big gap when you talk about placements in the education institutions per se. And that's how, when we did the research in the market, what we realized that there are portals, there are recruitment portals like Naukri, Indeed, LinkedIn, a lot of them, people are interacting there. But unfortunately, if you really need good faculties, you seriously use your network only to get good faculties. Still, that is common, very common, because somehow these platforms are also not helping, because their major focus is on BFSI and IT and sales and other fields, FMCG, but not on the education sector. And then there are new platforms which are, I think, upcoming emerging platforms like Apna and Hirect. Again, they are also more focused on, one is focused on the blue collar jobs and other one is focused more on the IT for the startups. So we realize in Edu vacancy that we really need to develop a platform which will be exclusively for the education sector. And now when you are making a platform for the education sector, what will we require there? Because most of the colleges, schools, they ask their newcomers, those who come there, the aspirants, to deliver a demo lecture or something like that. So what we have created is a video resume over the platform, so that a candidate can upload his video resume on the platform, and the interviews can also happen on the platform itself. At times, all the decision makers in a school or universities are not there present to take the interview of the candidate. So what they can do is they can always do it on the platform, and they can show it to the other decision makers, those who are not present in that particular interview. So they can always do that also on the platform. That is there. Next thing, which is very, very important, is I think you all are there from the B schools, and you all agree with me on one part. The institute industry interface is very, very important when we talk about the B schools, and they really need to do that thing. And I think most of the management schools are doing it also. I think I know I've been to a lot of management schools in the country, and those B schools are trying their level best to develop that kind of industry institute interface. But still, like, I was a teaching assistant in SUNY Buffalo in US, and trust me, the kind of environment out there in the B schools out there is a little bit different from the Indian environment. So we still, like, I'm saying, now we are seriously expose more practical approaches there in the B schools, but still we have to go a long way to develop that kind of thing. And so a lot of B schools require even the visiting faculties from the industries, those who are working in the industries, and they can come on Saturdays or whenever they are free to deliver good talks. Still, that is going through the network only right now. Edu Vacancy is the first platform which is going to connect those freelancers to the management schools, so that they can invite them and they can come there and deliver the talk on the new topics, the coming emerging areas. Because industry people, like, they are seriously in need when you talk about interacting with the B school students. Because I think somebody rightly said, management, law, engineering, these are all interdisciplinary if you see that way. Because at the end of the day, they all have to be there in the corporate world and work in the same direction, where they really need to use the resources and skill set required to perform the job out there. So this is also there on the Edu Vacancy platform. Apart from that, we also help the institutions in the personalized services also, where they require a particular member, basically the back office people, because back office also required there in most of the institutions. Apart from the faculty members, those are going to be there in the front part. And nowadays, even there are lots of engineering and B schools, those who require the admission counselors also, or the people, those who can promote or make that particular institute a brand in the market. And there are institutions, those who are now promoting their institutions in African market and the other underdeveloped markets, so that they can attract good people from there. Because that is what actually, if you see, these are the things which US, UK, Australia, if you see the population wise is just 3.5 crores or 4 crores max, but I think they have got so many good institutions and they are attracting students from more than 40-45 countries nowadays. So it's more about the diversity, which matters a lot when you talk about a good college or a good university. So that diversity, now Indian universities and management schools are also realizing that the diversity is very important. Not only the male-female ratio, but even the different diversity from the angle of culture and interacting with the students from the other countries, those who are coming for the exchange program or maybe coming directly to join them. So I think Edu Vacancy is a platform which is helping out in providing those kind of freelancers also. And that is what I can see. And I would request all of you to visit eduvacancy.com, or you can download the app and see that. I think this is the first initiative in the education recruitment sector. And I hope we will definitely get guidance from all the top dignitaries, those who are present here, so that we can grow it in a better way and we can really do wonders in coming years. That's all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nitin. Now we have come to the closure of this talk series, third talk series. So it is my duty to thank all of you. Let me thank first Dr. Bhimrai Maitri for this talk series.
Just 1 second. May I intervene? May I intervene and request Dr. Bhimrai Maitri to say a few words?
So good evening. Thank you very much. Thanks. It was a great discussion, lot of insights, and very super way Professor Bala moderated, and the way Professor Sri Gurnani ji and Prof. Rajendra Saab and Rajendra Srivastava Professor, the way I think insights given, it was really I think given a lot of takeaway for each one of us from these insights. And I thank each one of them very much for accepting the invitation and participating in ISDSI Global Talk Series. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for all of you for your valuable insights. And thanks Rahul Jain for organizing this event, and Professor Ravi Kumar Jain and Professor Jha. Thank you.
Back to organizers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I would like to mention here a few things, because for the audience, we have great academic for this event coming from SIBM Hyderabad. Thank you, Dr. Ravi Jain, for that. And we have academic partners coming from BIMTECH Noida. So thank you, Harvansh Chaturvedi sir, for supporting us, and Dr. Bhimrai Maitri for presenting this third ISDSI Global Talk Series. I would like to thank Professor S. Balasubramanian for moderating this session so nicely that we could get to know, or you brought the brain out from Mr. Prathamesh Raj Sinha and Dr. Rajendra Srivastava, and gave us a lot of insight, leading the business school for the next generation. I would like to thank Professor Rajendra Srivastava for taking out his time and giving us insights in order to take it forward. We look forward for your continuous support, sir. We thank Mr. Pramath Raj Sinha, founder and chairman of the society. Sir, your insights were very nice, and we would look forward to continuous engagement with us. I would like to thank ASMA for hosting this event. Thank you, Mr. Rahul Jain, MD of Innoserve Group, and bringing this platform for us. We have one more guest here, Mr. Dr. Eknath, Director of DY Patil. We also welcome you, sir. We thank all of you for being participative in the session, and we look forward for your continuous participation. I'd like to make one more announcement here that the next session for this talk series is on 16th of October, and this is third Saturday of the October. So to all the participants who are attending the session, this is an information for you. We thank all of you. We thank Mr. Nitin Gupta for bringing this insight of Edu vacancy and giving us support in terms of recruitment support, which will come from Edu vacancy. We'll definitely log in there and we'll check it, how we can take benefit of that. So thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless all of you. God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next session, as Dr. Jai has announced, it will be on 16th October, and the focus will be on the policy aspects of management education, where local and global perspectives will be brought in. So for all the business school directors and administrators, it's a must-have, must-attend session. So I request all of you to be there, and see you on 16th of October. Thanks, and till that time,
Thank you, sir.
see you from ISDSI Global. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajendra, Srivastava, and Pramath. Thank you very much, and everybody. Thank you.